Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the online service of Quimper Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, a loving, spirited, and ever more inclusive community. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, whomever you love, and whatever your faith tradition, we welcome you here today. My name is Onnalee Stevens, and I'm the worship assistant today. I'd like to begin this service by acknowledging that the water, land, and shorelines here in Port Townsend are the traditional territory of the Skjalm and Shamukum people. We honor and acknowledge our Indigenous members and neighbors and vow to help restore and sustain their homelands. In a moment, we will light the chalice, but first, let us settle our minds and calm our hearts with the ringing of the chime. We now invite you to sing along to the hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, led by Doug Rodgers and accompanied by Pat Rodgers on the piano.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Thank you, Doug and Pat. It is now time for our chalice lighting ritual. Please join Jim Golden and me in our chalice lighting. The words are written by our former intern and assistant minister, Florence Kaplow. In recognition of Labor Day, we light this flame to honor all work, not just the work of our hands and our backs, but for all the labors that support our world, especially those who boldly continue the work of peace, equity, and justice. Our opening words are written by Kate Lohr. We built this sanctuary as a place of refuge. May all who enter feel kindness and comfort. We built this building as a beacon of hope. May all who enter be reminded of our collective strength. We labored on this building with our own backs and hands. May all who enter feel strengthened by the friendship and solidarity of those who brought this place to life. We gather in this place of love and compassion. May all who enter, that's all of you, may all who enter feel at home here. What we'd like to do now is acknowledge and welcome those of you who are visiting us this morning. You're invited to say hello in the chat section and tell us your name and where you're from. The chat section, incidentally, can be found below or on the right side of your video when it is out of full screen. So we'd love to hear from you for there. We also hope you'll join us for our virtual coffee hour in our Zoom room. If you don't have that link, it will be posted in the chat section at the end of this service. And if you find this service useful or inspirational, and I'm sure you shall, hopefully both, please share the link with your friends and family. So welcome. Welcome, everyone. We're glad that you're with us today. We will now receive the offering. Today is the first Sunday of the month, so we will do our Hope offering. Hope stands for helping our people eat. And the money we raise today will go to our local food shelter. If you'd like to donate today, you have three options. Text the amount you'd like to give to the number now showing at the bottom of the screen, or go to our website, QUUF.org, and click on the giving link, or simply mail a check to QUUF. Just remember to put hope in the memo line. We will now gratefully receive your offering as we listen to George Stanley, Pat Rodgers, and Doug Rodgers sing, If I Had a Hammer.
I'd like to dedicate this song. I'd like to dedicate it to those people who have died or who are dying for freedom, so that we may walk this planet free and equal.
If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning, I'd hammer in the evening, all over this land. I'd hammer out danger, I'd hammer out warning, I'd hammer out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, all over this land. I'd ring out danger, I'd ring out warning, I'd ring out love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. If I had a song, I'd sing it in the morning, I'd sing it in the evening, all over this land. It's the song of justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land. Justice, it's the bell of freedom, it's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters, all over this land.
I have a few quick announcements. First, I'd like to remind everyone that our plans to reopen for in-person services next week, as most of you know, have been postponed. We will continue to offer, of course, these online services until it is safe to meet again, and we are working hard on a number of COVID-safe community connection opportunities. And secondly, it's time for another selfie roundup. As we approach the autumn equinox, we're hoping you can send photos that reflect the changing season, hopefully with you included in the photo. So whether it's picking apples, raking leaves, investing or harvesting in your garden, or drinking tea while wearing a snuggy sweater, please send your autumn-themed photos to selfie@QUUF.org by September 19th, and we'll show the slideshow on September 26th. Phyllis Waldenberg will be creating our selfie slideshow this time. Thanks a lot, Phyllis. We will now share our joys and sorrows, recognizing that our personal joys and sorrows are only a fragment of the joys and sorrows of the larger community. And so today I'd like to place 3 stones for the larger community. The first stone for our brothers and sisters who are still in Afghanistan and having a very, very difficult time. We add our prayers for them. And the second stone is for the recent information that we've all received about the upsurge of coronavirus and the filling up way too full the hospitals. So our prayers go to those people that are the people, nurses and doctors and other people working for them, but also for their families as well. And the third stone is for the people of the South, of Louisiana particularly. As you know, the people in New Orleans, there are over 1 million of them, and they may not have electricity, water for a long time. So we place our stone for those people in that area and for their families and for all of us who worry about them. And now, within our congregation, we light this first candle for Dawn Darrington, who was recently diagnosed with stage 4 bone cancer and has just started radiation therapy. Dawn, you may recall, had been active in our Welcoming Congregation program and had been a local business owner. Dawn wants us to know that she is both optimistic and she's realistic, and she'll keep us apprised. She is currently staying with a friend who is driving her to and from her appointments and helping her keep her spirits up. Once her treatments are complete, she'll be moving to the town of Elma, which is halfway between Olympia and Aberdeen. Let us hold Dawn in our loving thoughts and prayers as we light this candle of healing for her. Our second candle is for members Jesse and Angie, and for Angie's mother, Carol. Carol's currently at home with hospice, surrounded by love and light. Angie and Jesse are joyful that they're able to be with Carol during this time. And we have 2 joys to share today. The first one is for Betty Oppenheimer, who went through successful knee replacement surgery this week and is recovering at home. Hubby, Irv M., is taking good care of her, and he's away from home right now because he's at this service. And the second one is for a new member, Bruce Zalniaitis, who celebrated a birthday on September 1st. Happy birthday, Bruce. And now we place a final stone, holding in our hearts the joys and sorrows that I've shared, but also thinking of such joys and sorrows among us that are unexpressed, but as we all know, of no less importance. I invite you now, okay, thank you, into a moment of silence. Our reading today is entitled, Yes, We Will Build a Fellowship, by A.S. Koiser. Yes, we will build a fellowship. We'll seal the floor with kindness, and we'll coat the walls with peace, and we'll stuff the closets with strength and hang patience from the rafters. We will stack the cabinets with humanity and fill each room with truth and justice. We'll tuck comfort into every cushion and vitality into the vents and bravery into the banisters and security into the sockets and passion in the flue. So that when our children and our children's children look in, they will see love.
I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord. Well, it's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. Now. If I was a carpenter, I'd tell you what I'd do. I'd work all day and I'd work all night, just working on a building. I'm 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 working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. Holy Ghost building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. Now. If I was a rambling man, I'd tell you what I'd do. I'd stop my rambling, stop my gambling, work on a building. Now. If I was a gambling man, tell you what I'd do. I'd throw away the Queen of Spades and work on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building. Working on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. Ghost a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. Now, now, now. If I was a sinner man, I would tell you what I'd do. I'd stop my sin and start my praying. Working on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building. I'm working on a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. It's the Holy Ghost a building. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. Holy Ghost a building for my Lord, for my Lord, for my Lord. It's the Holy Ghost a building. It's the Holy Ghost building. It's the Holy Ghost building. Holy Ghost a building for my Lord, for my Lord. Thank you.
Our speakers today, Irv Mortenson and Jim Golden, are known by so many people in this particular audience, but they're both longtime QUUF members. Irv was involved in the first build and the expansion, and Jim was involved in the expansion. Join me in welcoming our first speaker, Irv Mortenson.
Building a building, building an institution. September 1995, Betty spotted a notice for a gathering of UUs and the leader. They had hired a quarter-time minister, Tim Haley, to speak at their meetings at the Tri-Area Center, and out of Betty's curiosity, we went. An interesting sermon and a generous welcome from the predominantly older members. Not long after, there was a meeting that was even more interesting, a room full of 30 mostly elders, with Carl Nomura and Maitland Hardiman bringing forth plans for a new UU building in Port Townsend. Having started an RE program in 1987, these folks had decided that, given the age of the participants, they needed to reach out to younger people and bring in families with children. The decision to move into Port Townsend was part of that plan. We were very impressed and a bit doubtful with an optimistic building budget of $80,000, and knowing that much of the labor would come from members with most in their 60s and 70s. We thought they were crazy. Betty and I had moved from Seattle and wanted to find a connection in the community, and found the UUs to be an interesting group. The elders welcomed us with open arms. We were among the younger members they were looking for at 38 and 48. Lars and Lucille Watson essentially adopted us. Before too long, we were meeting on site for the initial groundbreaking, right over there, with Betty and me joining with shovels in hand. The budget was tight, and Blue Heron, a local building cooperative led by Malcolm Dorn, worked well with volunteers to build the building, and several became members as well. I had a small carpentry business, and as the structure was completed, I was asked to head up the finished trim installation and was given free range to design and lead the effort: ceilings, trim, windows, doors, and exterior details. Total final cost, $104,000 for the fellowship hall and the RE building, a Unitarian miracle. It is important to realize the elders were the builders. They did most of the heavy lifting: huge foam blocks and lots of concrete, mud to set and mix and move and place, and wood framing to complete the high roof, interior walls, and the RE building. The weekends would bring a larger and younger crowd in to help finish interior and exterior walls, painting, and so on, not to mention the folks working behind the scenes to organize and provide lunches for the workers. Many of our builders have passed on, but in so many ways, they literally built the foundation we now stand on. Growth, growth, growth. Fast forward, even before we opened in 1997, we were overwhelmed by new folks coming to help the build, and when it was complete, even more came, having watched the progress at 2333 San Juan Avenue. What was to be the foyer was full of chairs and standing room only in the back. Lucky the fire marshal never appeared. Working our way through part-time ministers and ups and downs of building the institution, we knew we would need to expand. For the next 10 years, we struggled with changing ministry, tight space, part-time staff, and operating procedures, learning how to church and how to be together in community as we continued to grow in size and in spirit. The new sanctuary, Building a Building, Part 2. We had become an institution, but we were packed in like sardines, and our energy was spread across many areas: Alps, OWL, LGBTQ+, AIDS, Haines Street cottages, field trips, youth education, annual retreats, amazing music programs, poetry, homeless shelter, you name it, we were there. And the lack of space was unavoidable, but change was coming. We achieved full-time ministry with the arrival of Bruce Bodie in 2004. The attendance continued to increase. We had already purchased the lot next door for our expansion, and in 2006, we began to come together with many meetings and more communities to be in planning for the new building. By the fall of 2006, we had Richard Berg as architect, a full-out building capital campaign with a goal of $750,000, and Malcolm Dorn again as our main contractor. Plans to have volunteers to work with the pro carpenters were again in place. Malcolm provided John Edwards as our head man for the build, and John did great with his crew and with us as volunteers. Jim Golden and I were partners as we moved forward. I served as chair of the building committee, and Jim was front man for the money discussions as the chair of the building steering committee, and again, much to my delight, I was tapped to design and lead many of the finishing details in the new building. Building a building, building a building. We did it once, we did it twice. As Jim Golden said as we moved into the new sanctuary, quote, "What I've gotten out of this is the amazing sense of how a group of people can come together where everyone feels closer as a result of the process rather than having arguments. The spirit of community that has come out of this is amazing," end quote. Those of us who are proud to be the builders are just as proud of the institution that came out of it and the new generations of members who continue to find their way as we did. Building a building is hard work, but so rewarding. Building and keeping an institution is also hard work and is also rewarding. This year of COVID has brought us to a virtual church, and we are missing many of the personal contacts, celebrations, and joint efforts we have been known for. What has gotten us through hard times is listening to one another, acknowledging where we differ, and then compromising for the good of community. We need to renew our shared vision of QUUF as a cohesive and vital institution in Port Townsend. We have helped the larger community by our existence, by sharing our vision, and by working for a healthy future that includes us all.
For those of you who might be confused, I'm Jim. But because of my eyesight challenges, I've asked my wife, Kendra, to read for you the thoughts that I want to share. Thank you.
We first visited Port Townsend in late 1999, and then we moved here at the end of 2000, in large part because of QUUF. I was impressed by the connectedness and sense of accomplishment that Building the Building Part 1 had created among the congregants, and I hoped that someday I would get to share those same kinds of feelings. And 10 years later, with the completion of the Part 2 build in 2010, my hopes had become a reality. One challenge created by the initial build and the growth that followed it was how to deal with the need for expansion of the building. At that time, we had a single city block, incapable of supporting the significantly larger facilities that our success required. There were three choices: move to a new location, leaving the building behind; divide into two congregations, one of which would find another home; or 3, acquire land adjacent to the existing building. There was a vacant lot, next door. However, the owner had no interest in selling it to QUUF. Then, Betty Oppenheimer, an avid reader of the PDN obituaries, discovered in 2003 that the property owner had died. She contacted the man's children, who were excited to sell. When we presented the opportunity to the congregation during the Sunday service announcements, we almost immediately had $75,000 in pledges and $30,000 in member loans. So we purchased the land for $105,000. Clearly, the appetite for expansion was great. When I look back at the 5-year project that the expansion turned out to be, I think of time, money, cooperation, and community, each of which played an important role in our success. As chair of the Building Steering Committee for 3+ years, I got to experience all of them. 2006 included many small group after-church discussions, followed by the formation of 9 task forces with over 80 members working towards defining our wants and needs. A full 1/3 of our membership served on a task force. At the same time, we planned and held a capital campaign assisted by a UUA consultant. During the summer, she interviewed many in the congregation, reported that we were in a healthy place for this project, and estimated that we could raise about $700,000. With her guidance, we received pledges of $685,000, 3.5 times our annual pledges at the time. One significant departure we made from standard practice was to not celebrate individual gifts, but to celebrate what we as a community had raised. During this time, as Irv mentioned, we picked Richard Berg as our architect. One of the architects we did not pick had a lot of experience designing churches. After being informed he was not our choice, he nonetheless offered to spend an afternoon with us to discuss any questions we might have. In addition to solving a significant issue for us, whether to have a sloped floor or flat floor in the sanctuary, he gave us additional food for thought. When we asked him what was the most common major mistake made by congregations, his answer was failure to keep within a budget, resulting in an incomplete, possibly unused building. This helped crystallize our decision to use the raise money, then only build what we can pay for model, rather than the start building and the money will come model. We assumed that in addition to the $685,000 in pledges, we could afford a $400,000 mortgage and could contribute 5,000 hours of volunteer labor worth about $75,000. We also decided to include a 10% contingency amount to our cost estimates in our budget. 2007 was a time of design. The congregation approved the formal program document telling the architect what we wanted. In April, his first design, the Nautilus, had to be rejected due to acoustic issues, and he went back to the drawing board. His second design, created with an almost overwhelming amount of input from QUUF members, is what we built. In late 2007, after Richard had produced schematic drawings for the building, we asked Malcolm Dorn, who was to become our general contractor, to give us a detailed cost estimate. The estimate showed that even with significant volunteer labor, we were almost $300,000 short. What to do, beyond just worrying? We came up with a novel idea. Let's give the congregation choices and let them decide. So as a part of the stewardship campaign in the spring of 2008, we produced a building options document indicating what we would defer in 9 steps depending on how far short we were. Our reasoning was enough additional money would be raised for those items that the congregation felt were important. Their choice, not ours. $200,000 additional money was pledged, in addition to a 10% increase in operating pledges that year. Malcolm was able to find $70,000 in cost savings with only minor modifications to the plans, and we got a Chalice Lighters grant. So it looked like we would be able to get everything, and so we began. By the end of November 2008, we had our building permit, and work began in January of 2009 with an estimated build time of 12 months. At the end of April, we were on schedule. The volunteers had already contributed 2,500 hours to the build. And we announced 5 stucco parties for the summer, Saturdays where nearly everyone in the congregation, from kids to 90-year-olds, could be part of the joy of community building. There were actually 7 such parties with nearly 60 participants in each. We had a Words to the Future celebration also, modeled after the Habitat for Humanity's prayers in the walls. But the financial crisis of 2008 resulted in the cancellation of $65,000 in pledges, half of our contingency amount. And with other cost increases, by September of 2009, we realized that we would likely run short. Rather than asking the congregation for more money yet again, we asked for time, proposing that the remaining 30% of the build be completed with all volunteer labor, excluding supervisors and subcontractors. And we did it. The total number of volunteer hours was a remarkable 12,000 hours, over twice our original estimate. It was an amazing outpouring of community, all working together toward the finish line. In February 2010, we joyfully dedicated the new space. However, even then, we were not done. In particular, the kitchen was just a shell, no cabinets or appliances. This, along with renovation of the old kitchen into what is now the den, offices into what is now the loft area, and original sanctuary space into what is now the fellowship hall and entry, was accomplished during 2010 with the continuation of all volunteer labor and additional financial support from the congregation, led by the Building Use and Completion Committee, or BUC. That committee also negotiated the use of the space among all the very eager parties. Over the 5 years of this project, the volunteers never quit. The money came in, and people loved the sense of working together toward a common goal. Various issues had to be decided, and difficult decisions had to be made, such as the floor of the sanctuary, flat or sloped, configuration of the chancel, what chairs to buy, what to eliminate or to defer. Each of these had the potential to be divisive, but none was, with the exception of a 2-day uprising of the Save Our Kitchen Committee. They were reacting to an ill-conceived comment of mine. I have often looked back and wondered why it went so smoothly. I give credit to a combination of this being a desire shared by nearly the entire congregation and a commitment by the leadership to keeping the congregation involved and informed during the entire 5 years. From 2007 to 2009, for example, there were 16 congregational meetings and discussions. I'd like to end today with the words that concluded my talk at the dedication celebration held back in February of 2010. Here's what I said. I do want to give thanks to all of you who recognize that we are all members of a community that we cherish. You didn't try to impose your individual will on the community, either through a domineering personality or financial bribery. You supported all of our process to be sure that everyone who wanted to could be involved, even though it took a lot longer to get to probably the same place. And you remembered that, in the end, It's not about the building, it's about the people. As we go forward, both in finishing the building and using it, I hope and trust that this spirit will continue to prevail. May it be so.
Thank you, Irv, Jim, and Kendra. I learned a lot from this presentation, and I'm sure everyone else did too. Now, for those of you who miss the sanctuary, I want to inform you that we'll be opening up this space for quiet meditation every Tuesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., beginning later this month. Just keep your eye on the Friday update for the details, or simply give the office a call and we'll fill you in. In the meantime, please enjoy a slideshow of photos from the expansion project, including the building of this sanctuary. It will be followed by Pat Rodgers and the QUUF choir in singing the hymn number 1 in our hymnal, "May Nothing Evil Cross This Door."
That's one of my favorite hymns. Keeps you up all night, doesn't it? Next week, we will welcome our senior and assistant ministers, Kate Lohr and Kate Kenny, into the pulpit for the launch of our new program year. The title of the sermon is Adrift. Are we there yet? Director of Family Ministries, Bo Olgren, will be back too, so don't miss this wonderful homecoming service. And now, will you please join Jim and me in our chalice extinguishing words? We extinguish our flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, or the power of transformation. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. After the service, I hope you'll join us for our virtual coffee hour. What you can expect is to be placed in a Zoom breakout room with one of our 6 coffee hosts, who will in turn facilitate personal check-ins and discussion of the sermon topic. I hope to see you there. But first, let us turn our attention to Pat Rodgers, who will play a ragtime piece, Tennessee Tantalizer by Chase Hunter.